Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be playing out a little bit of a thought experiment. So we've started to see the rise of tools that promise to autonomously write and generate code. And one of the things that I wanted to see is how you might practically implement something like that. Because if you've played with ChatGPT or other tools that can do code generation for you, it's usually a little bit of an iterative process. You're going to declare what you want, pass it to the model. It's going to give you a result back, and then you're going to have to kind of bounce around and figure out what you're going to go back and forth with the model until it gets what you're looking for. And there's probably going to be lots of iteration. You're going to get the code, run the code, tweak the code. But if you wanted to build a fully autonomous agent that could generate code on its own, you don't want that human back and forth. You want the ability to just give it a goal and turn it loose and have it come back with something successful. So started kind of playing with how you might do that. And what I landed on for this POC, this proof of concept, is the idea of taking a set of unit tests and feeding those unit tests into a back-end language model, and then providing some kind of automatic iteration that would basically feed in the tests, get the response back, implement the response, run the response against the tests, and then if it failed, return all of that, the errors, the tests, the previously generated code to the model, and then loop until success, effectively. And that is exactly what we're going to be walking through today. This is going to be a full code walkthrough, building out the solution. There is a project out there on GitHub. I will post a link to it in the video description. That will be this YouTube OpenAI Dev Agent 1 starter. And it's going to include not the output directory or PyCache, but it will include a requirements.txt, a test.py, with some very strange, arbitrarily difficult test cases. And it will also include a base prompt.txt, because honestly, I just didn't want you to have to write that. That's a lot of typing that isn't really relevant to the code. So let's go ahead and get started. I've already provisioned an environment with Anaconda. You should go ahead and do the same. I'm using Python 3.11. If you're not using Anaconda, then obviously a virtual env or something of that sort. So I'm going to go ahead and start up my IDE here. All right. And here we go. And the first thing we should probably do before we go any further is go ahead and generate your OpenAI API keys. This does cost money. It is not entirely free, but you do not have to be a full OpenAI subscriber. You can basically go into platform.openai.com, and you are going to be able to go under settings, and then API keys, and generate a key. You will need to go into billing and go ahead and load a credit card. And I think you have to make a minimum payment of something like $5 to get access to the API. Their API is very, very affordable. I think I loaded $10 months ago. I have yet to use all of it. So not expensive, but this is something you need to do. You need to go in and get an API key set up. I am going to say we should put this in a config.txt. So inside this project, go ahead and create config.txt. And in config.txt, you are going to put ChatGPT API key, and then a space, and then the API key. And obviously, I'm not going to put my key on here because I'm not going to stick my key on YouTube. So I'm going to close this out and copy it over from another terminal. but that is what you're looking for. So let me just go ahead and get mine over from my other project. Let's see. All right, I now have a key. Again, I'm not going to open that back up because now it has my key in it, and that's not something I want to share. So let's go ahead and start putting together the code. So we already have the test.py that you need. That should be in the starter project that you've already generated or already downloaded. We are going to need a main.py. We're going to need a ChatGPT.py. And then just because I didn't want to stick it in the main function, we are going to need a run_tests.py. And let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to mock out the chatgpt.py. I don't need the full file yet. I just need, let's go ahead and do import. Oh, and you know what? I need to make sure that I am selecting the right interpreter. In this case, this is OpenAI Dev Agent 1. And I've already installed these, but if you haven't yet, you will need to do pip install-r requirements.txt to pull in the appropriate requirements. If you don't have them yet, this does take a few minutes. So go ahead and kick those off. So let's do import torch. And then we're also going to import from OpenAPI or from OpenAI, import OpenAI. And then we'll go ahead and declare our class model. And we're going to do def init. And in here, we are going to have self. We're also, for now, we can go ahead and just say pass. Again, we're just stubbing it out. We will need def get param. And that's going to take self and param name. And we'll pass on that as well. We will need an ask function, which will be for asking the model. That's going to take self, a test string, a goal string, a last generated code string, and we're going to pass in a default value of none, an error string, because we're going to be passing the error back in every time we run the code, if an error was generated. All right, and then again, we can do a pass, and then down here, we will need prompt def prompt formatter, and that will be very, very similar. In fact, I think it will take all of the same arguments, so we can just go ahead and copy paste. This is not wanting to cooperate. And okay. I am just going to retype. It's not liking me at the moment. Self str. And some context on the copy and paste fail there. I'm currently playing with the Vim plugin for VS Code and getting used to some of the Vim actions, so I will admit that I'm not quite as fast yet as I am in default mode. And there are some things I'm still figuring out. none. Okay. And then here we will again just do a pass because we don't need any of these yet. And actually, for ask, we're just going to return a string that's called some code. All right. And then let's come over here to run tests as well. And we're just going to stub this out as well. We're going to do def run pytest. We'll just say run tests. Yes, this is going to be a file with a single function. You could also just put this in main, but it looked kind of ugly to me, so I'm putting it here. And then we're going to just return none for the moment. Okay, now let's come over here and put together our main function. So you will want to make sure you have an output directory. I've already got one, but if you don't, go ahead and create output. We're going to do from ChatGPT import model. We're going to do from run tests import run tests. We'll go ahead and declare model equals model. Something we're going to need to do is actually copy. So we're going to generate a main.py in this output directory. And in order to get all of the paths to line up easily, we are going to need to copy test.py down into it in order to make all that, work the way it's supposed to. So the first thing we're going to do here is go ahead and do a with open test.py as file. We'll go ahead and read in our tests.read. And then with open output test.py. And we will read that in, bring that up as writable as file. And then we'll do file.write tests. Okay. Let's go ahead and run this and just make sure this part works. Hey, we have an output directory and it has a test.py, and that is exactly what we're looking for. Okay, cool. Continuing on, we are going to go ahead and create a last generated code and set it to none. We're going to create an error variable and set it to none. And I'm going to say max iterations is 10. So it's going to try 10 times to successfully generate the right working code. And if it doesn't succeed in those 10 tries, then we probably want to return back to the human and let them take a look. So for I in range, max iterations, I'm going to say response equals model.ask, tests equals tests, goal, and we're going to say this is a simple math function class. We'll pass in last generated code as last generated code, and error equals error. Okay. With open, now we need to write it out. So output / app.py, and we'll make that writable. Hang on just a moment. Yep, so we're going to make that writable as file. And we're going to do file.write response. And then go ahead and run our tests. So results, error equals run tests. And then it looks like for run tests, we need two variables. So let's go ahead and return none and done for now. So we'll say if result is 0, print completed code generation, all tests passed. And then we're going to break. else, we're going to go ahead and print our error. And then we're going to print failed tests, regenerating code with some dots. And then finally, we're going to set last generated code to response. So let's go ahead and run our loop and just make sure that this works. Okay, cannot unpack, non-iterable. Let's come back here and make sure I saved this. I may not have. Okay, and that's exactly what we expected. All of the results were none. Obviously, no code was generated. Actually, it should have generated something. We should have, hey, an app.py with some code in it. So all of that is working correctly with our stubbed out functions. So let's go ahead and build out the tests. And then once we have our PyTest function, we will be able to go and actually write the code generator. So we're going to import subprocess. And we will make our command pytest -v /output/test.py. And we'll do a try result equals subprocess.run command. And we're going to say std_out equals subprocess.pipe. And std_error equals subprocess.pipe. Oh. I forgot to put a comma there. That's important. And then we'll say text equals true. Okay. And return result.return code. And then we're actually going to do result.stderr plus result.stdout. We just want to stick those two things together. And then down here, we will do an except file not found error. Print error pytest command not found or unable to execute. And then return 1. And then we can come in here and delete that. All right, so now what we should get is a much more, it should still fail because there's been no code generated, but we should get much more in-depth errors, which we did. So it attempted to run it. It got an error from our script that just says some code for now, because there's no valid code. It had nothing it could test. So let's go ahead and code out our ChatGPT .py here. So we're going to need a few things. Let's go ahead and start with our getParam method because that's necessary to load our configuration. So if we wrote a config.txt, we need to go ahead and load the config from it. So I'm going to say param equals a blank string. And then we're going to do with open config.txt as config file. For line in config file, if param name in line, we're going to grab an index for line.find, and then we'll find the colon. And then we're going to say param equals line idx plus 1 colon, and then at the end we'll do a dot strip. And that should return grab our param. Now, just to make sure it goes ahead and errors out if it can't find it, we're going to say if the length of param is 0, then go ahead and raise an exception. unable to load param name. Okay. And then finally return param. All right, so that should be able to go and pull an API key out of config.txt. So we can go ahead up here and use it to configure our client. So we can say self.api underscore key equals self.getParam ChatGPT API key. This should be whatever you named it in the file. And then we're going to do self.chatGPT client equals OpenAI API key equals self.api key. Okay. And then we should be all we need there. Let's go down and we're going to work on our prompt formatter. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is actually go grab the base prompt. That's why I provided this to you. So all right, so now we have our base prompt. So I do think it's worth reading through this and understanding it for a moment. So this is where, and I think the term prompt engineering is probably overused, but I think this is a legitimate situation for it. So you have to design a prompt that's going to get the model to give you consistently what you're looking for in an automated scenario. So what we're saying here is please take the attached unit tests and goal and provide code written in Python that will pass the tests. You are being used as part of a fully automated system. The answer you provide will be directly written to a .py file to be executed. Absolutely do not return the Python executable or quotes around the code. You'll notice this is in here because it's something that it constantly did. Just return the raw code. Please don't include any filler text, just the code. Don't include the tests themselves in your response. If the original code provided failed, this prompt might include an error along with the unit test. Please keep that error in mind. So there is our base prompt. And then here, it's just a matter of saying prompt equals base prompt dot format, goal equals goal, tests equals tests, last generated code equals last generated code, and error equals error. Okay, and then we can return prompt. All right, now up in ask, we can hopefully tie it all together. So under ask, we're going to say we want our prompt equals self dot prompt formatter. And again, tests equals tests, goal equals goal, last generated code equals last generated code, and error equals error. We're going to say response is equal to self.chatGPT client dot chat dot completions. That's the we're calling the completions API dot create. And I don't know why I put a colon at the end there. I don't need one. Let's go back down to where we were. Okay, open paren. And we're going to say messages, and then square braces, and then curly braces. And this is all just in the ChatGPT API documentation. And I'm sure you could use another model. This is just what I'm using. So I'm going to say user, and then contents is equal to prompt. Okay. And then way down here, after the square brackets, we're going to say model equals, and we're going to do GPT 4.0. Okay, we have our model. Let's go ahead and do output text equals response dot choices. We have to drill down into the response dot message dot content, and then we'll go ahead and say output text equals output text dot strip to strip out all the white space around it, and then finally we can return output text. All right, and if I have had absolutely no typos, we should be able to run this and get the results we're looking for. So remember, last time we got 100% invalid syntax because it said just running some code. Okay, it passed on the first try. I was kind of hoping it wouldn't, but it did. So here's our app.py. This is the code that it came up with, and unfortunately it worked straight out of the gate. Let's do something. Let's play with a dumber model. Let's see. Let's do 3.5 turbo. All right, there we go. We have a set of failed tests and we're regenerating the code. And I actually haven't tried this with GPT 3.5 Turbo, so it may not successfully figure out the problem. Obviously 4.0 did. All right, so 3.5 Turbo couldn't figure it out. It wasn't smart enough. Let's go back to 4.0. All right, so you can see that we're still seeing some errors, but you can see that the assertion errors are a little bit different each time. Like it's, and then here we go. We have all tests passed. So what this showed is this showed that we were able to interact with a, with a language model, use an objective yardstick. In this scenario, the objective yardstick was some, some Python tests, but you could use all kinds of things. You could use a SonarQube code quality report. You could use, Selenium tests. The point is to have your yardstick, your source of truth, be something external to the model. So we have an external source of truth, and then we use that external source of truth to iterate with responses from the model and validate those responses, validate those actions that we're taking with it, against what we're holding up as our reality of whether the end result is good or not. And using that kind of methodology, you can get something that can auto-generate code, and auto-generate it correctly, to an objective standard. So, I think I started out with, this was kind of a thought experiment and proof of concept. I do not expect this code to be something that is particularly useful to you. Honestly, writing the tests in this case was more challenging than I think just writing the code and validating it would have been. But I do think as an experiment in how you can use a language model to auto-generate things for you and to, work in an autonomous fashion, I think this overall pattern is something that's worth considering. So if you enjoyed this video, if you like AI and code and Python content, please hit like, hit subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.